Happening now on Grid Tonight. Austin Dillon's win at Richmond will not count towards his playoff eligibility after getting penalized by NASCAR. Can the number 3 team get another win before the regular season ends? David Malukas is on the move again. Did he make the right decision to sign with AJ Foyt Racing for 2025? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambeth, and with me are Joshua Birch, Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, and Ben Snyder from Grid Encore and NASCAR.info. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat, ask questions, and support us through Super Chat. Now, Josh, take it away with our top story this evening. Some big news coming from the world of NASCAR.
Yes, indeed. Good evening, Kobe. Good evening, Ben. Good evening, Matt. So, after Austin Dillon crashed both Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin to win last Sunday night's NASCAR Cup Series race at Richmond Raceway, his victory won't count towards his playoff eligibility. NASCAR officials took a few days to review the finish of the Richmond Cup race and concluded that Dillon would get to keep the win, but it wouldn't get him into the postseason. Now, to go along with that, Dillon and the number 3 team were docked 25 driver and owner points, which drops him from 26th to 31st in the standings. If Dillon wants to make the playoffs now, he'll need to win at Michigan, Daytona, or Darlington, with the automatic playoff berth gone after the penalty. Elton Sawyer, the senior vice president of competition, said they looked at the data and the evidence showed that a line had been crossed with Dillon's move. Richard Childress Racing released a short statement saying that they're very disappointed in the penalty and do plan to appeal. The photo taken by Sean Gardner as well from Getty Images. So Ben and Matt are with me to talk about it this evening as well. Ben, nice to have you back on the show. Starting with you, do you agree with NASCAR's decision to revoke Dillon's playoff eligibility? And do you believe that this sets a new precedent to prevent desperate intentional wrecks like we've seen taking place here today?
Well, Josh, Matt, good to be with you both as well. I do agree with the decision to revoke his playoff eligibility temporarily. We'll get into that in just a second. But with all due respect, I don't know that I agree with our thumbnail and show title tonight, because I don't know what the precedent is now. I thought the precedent was if you right rear hook somebody, you get sat out for a race. And I think Bubba Wallace fans today have every right to be outraged. Chase Elliott fans today have every right to be outraged. What is the precedent now? We don't know what the precedent is. We now know today that apparently you can right rear hook somebody less than 5 seconds after you already spun another driver out. Going into turn 3, you can do a right rear hook coming out of turn 4, and you can not only keep your victory, but you don't get suspended for that. You're going to go to Michigan, and make no mistake about it, he's still playoff eligible. They took his playoff eligibility away in terms of the fact that he won a race. It's not going to count, but he is still playoff eligible. If he goes out and wins Michigan, where he's had some good runs in the past, he's won twice at Daytona before. He had to use the bumper both times to do that one as well, but he's won at Daytona. He could do it again, and he finished second in the Southern 500 in 2020 at Darlington. So I'm not expecting it. I think where that car has run this year, Richmond was certainly an anomaly. I don't expect him to go out and win any of those 3 races, but I feel better about his chances there than I would at 3 other different tracks to end the regular season. So, and by the way, docking him 25 driver and owner points, so what? So he went from 32nd to 26th back down to 31st. Now, what difference does it make? He's still got to win a race. And if he does, he'll finish minimum 16th in the standings, and I guess they can enjoy their charter bonuses that come with that on the owner's points side of things. I don't know. I think that it's a total nothing burger to take points away, given the situation that he's in right now. So I appreciate, at the bare minimum, that this isn't going to get him into the playoffs. But the message that I've gotten from NASCAR now is that you can do this to win a race. And if you are fine with that win not getting you into the playoffs in a season where, if we're being honest, you've been a 31st, 32nd place car for much of the year, you're not going to win the championship anyway. So if you're fine, if to you winning's all that matters and there's no difference between 16th in points and 30th in points, then you can do this to win a race, and the record book will always and forever show that you won that race at Richmond, and it'll always and forever show that you got to come back the next week in Michigan, because what we thought the precedent was apparently doesn't exist anymore. But you know what bothered me the most was listening to Elton Sawyer when he sat down with Kim Kuhn a couple hours ago, I guess, as the news was coming out. And this is a tweet from Davey Siegel quoting Elton Sawyer and saying, drivers understand where the line is. This penalty shows them, quote, we know where the line is as well. And this is not something that we're going to tolerate. Are you kidding me? You are by definition tolerating this. Yeah. Now you can make the argument that you're not accepting it. At least you took the playoff eligibility away. So you're not accepting it in that regard, and that he's reaping the full benefits of this victory. But by letting him keep the win and maintain playoff eligibility because you didn't suspend him, so the waiver isn't even a question. And I guess the precedent from Chase Elliott is the waiver would have been granted regardless, but he keeps the win. He maintains his playoff eligibility because he's not going to have to sit out a race. If that's not tolerating this move to win a race, then I don't know what is. So it is very hard for me to sit here today and find closure in what we saw Sunday night, because to me, this was deemed an acceptable move. I mean, this is a slap on the wrist penalty. He wasn't going to win a championship anyway. He still has a shot to get in the playoffs to finish 15th or 16th or whatever the hell that means for his season. And he gets to keep the win. It's just mind-boggling to me. And I don't know what the precedent is now. We can sit here and say, well, a line's been drawn. They know where the line is now. I don't know where the line is now. Bubba Wallace didn't have to sit out a race. Chase Elliott did this. He had to sit out a race. Austin Dillon did it for the win on the last lap, coming to take the checkered flag. And he's going to Michigan next week. I don't understand.
And to that point, in those other instances you speak of, Ben, those guys took out one car and Austin took out two.
Yes.
I obviously didn't see this live because it was on at stupid o'clock for us in the UK. Sorry, Josh, I know you were well awake doing the race.
Too long, my friend.
Or whatever it was.
And go over
so I'm
time.
not seeing it
Sorry.
Yeah, not seeing it in full, but I knew we were going to talk about it even before this news broke a couple of hours ago. So I went back and checked. And for anyone that hasn't seen this, well, I know there's people that tune into us that aren't, up to speed with NASCAR like we are. Austin Dillon was going to win this race with 2 laps to go, I think it was, and he was just about to pull a lap on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Ryan Preece, who was already a lap down. And Stenhouse somehow bundles his way into Preece, which is just a completely random move. I don't understand what that was all about. Ricky being Ricky again. And then we get Ben's favourite overtime. And then this happens, and he bundled the restart, Dillon. He made a cock up of the restart, which he had control of. And then he's in the position where, and he's what were we saying now? He's got 3 races left, with 4, including the end of this one. He's got to do something. They're telling him on the radio, you've got to do something. We've heard the clips throughout the last couple of days, and you can use the phrase, he did what he needed to do to win. But that's not the way to. That's just. It's just absolute nonsense. He was, as Joey Logano said in the pit lane afterwards, he was never going to make the corner to. When he ran into the back of Joey, he just absolutely cleaned through Logano, and then Hamlin ended up getting wiped out in the process. To use a phrase that Josh will be more afraid with than Ben, perhaps, it's just not cricket. This isn't how you go about motor racing. Just crashing into people here, there, and everywhere and especially guys that are already in with Denny and with Joey that are already locked in as well. It just smacks of terribleness. The penalty is, and until you brought that up, Ben, at the very start about the right hook thing, I'd never even crossed my mind that those guys were benched for a week or whatever for doing basically a similar move with Elliott and with Wallace. So he's back next week as if nothing had happened.
Yeah, well, and
the points thing is just silly.
Yes, the point thing is absolutely nothing, Burger. And another thing I think that Elton Sawyer said was that people are going to bring up those 2 examples and say, well, why wasn't he? And he said those happened at 1.5 mile tracks where the speeds were closer to 160 miles an hour.
And
well, I don't know. You can go back to Matt Kenseth in 2015. That was Martinsville's speeds, I guess, are even lower than, well, maybe not because that was at the end of a straightaway, but whatever. It's a short track, and it's even a shorter track than Richmond is. And Matt Kenseth got 2 races for that. So I don't. And Denny Hamlin, ironically enough, having been involved in this as well, got on the radio when that happened and said, I just can't get over what this sport has come to, just how bleeped up it is. How do you even crown a real champion now? And that's one of my all-time favorite quotes, because we sat here for 9 years and it's only continued to get worse and worse. And I don't know. I didn't even bring this up on Encore on Monday because there's, like I said, so many different layers to this here. Isn't this the same guy that the week after Chase Elliott got suspended, he was whining about Austin Cindric supposedly hooking him in the right rear for something that was much more egregious, much closer to a racing incident? And he said, I hope Cindric has to sit out next week. Well, and then he goes and does this. I mean, I cannot wrap my head around the fact that he's going to be racing next week. And I apologize. You guys said my audio was fine before the show started. I apologize to the listeners if the microphone quality isn't as good. I didn't bring my mic today. I'm still in my work office because I didn't think I'd have to come on the show tonight because I was that confident that he was going to be suspended and I could just get my brief thoughts across in the chat room. But apparently I had too much confidence in the sanctioning body here. I had to come on the air tonight to give my opinions because I am just losing my mind at how the only thing we appear to be capable of being consistent on in this sport is inconsistency. I don't know what the precedent is. Nobody knows what the precedent is now.
They make it up as they go along.
Yeah, I'll bring up how you. Good thing I still haven't got into NASCAR. Says, you're not missing anything, not at all. I will go back to a phrase I use regularly on this show. We've bashed INDYCAR a lot this year. I've bashed NASCAR in the last couple of months. We had the debacle of the rain at New Hampshire. The race before the break at Indianapolis, the end of that race was farcical at best. They come back. They've got 2 weeks to think about things, and they come back, and this is the way you go into it. And, of course, the race was on Sunday, and it's taken till Wednesday to get this out, and we thought Formula One race control was bad at times. And, of course, the clip will be seen around the world. They've got their viral moment. It's the Game 7 BS rubbish, and it will get played on the pre-race show next week, and NBC will talk about it, which is their right to do, of course, because NASCAR doesn't have any daily shows anymore where they get to get all this stuff out of the way on TV. That's another story for another day. And then it will get played, and then if he wins, of course, as Ben, if you say, if he's got 3 more chances, if he gets through at Daytona, it'll be like Dillon has risen like Lazarus to come back into the playoff mix when he'll only finish 16th anyway because RCR have been terrible. They just needed to, as you say, this is where we are. Do not do this. Stay at home next week. We'll see you at Daytona. And then everybody goes, okay, that's where we are. But they've not done that.
And if we could bring behind the mic Matthew Owens' comment back up here, because
sorry, I didn't catch
got word right before we came on the air. RCR put out a statement and a press release. They are planning to appeal this, and so I don't know. Maybe we come on the air on Grid Live pre-race on Saturday with more breaking news that the appeal's been granted. And I mean, it's just I don't know. I feel like when certain things are egregious enough, we should be able to use common sense and say. And by the way, people arguing NASCAR, had no precedent. There was nothing in the rule book that said that they could overturn the win or whatever. They put a 13th driver in a 12th driver chase 11 years ago. So don't give me that crap. There's nothing in the rule book that says we can do it. You added a driver to the playoffs off of something that had to do with an entirely different organization. Don't tell me there's nothing in the rule book that has a clause that allows us to do it. You clearly there's a precedent that's been set that you can make it up and as you go along, to your point, Matt. And they're going to try to argue during the appeal, Denny actually can't, because fans were doing this the last couple of days as well. Denny crossed the white line, he came up. Well, of course he came up. He's taking the typical racing line out of a corner, mashing the throttle, moving up the track, arcing the corner to try to win the race. And Austin Dillon, if you look at the SMT data, was turning 30 degrees harder to the left than he would have on his normal racing line because he had every intention to right rear hook Denny Hamlin and take him out so he could win the race instead. And he's still going to get to go to Michigan next week because apparently there is no precedent.
Tweet of the week. Tweet of the week from Denny. And one of my first thoughts when I caught a back up with this on Monday morning when I woke up was, of course, Denny's been involved in this because, this is just exactly right up his street to be involved in something like this. The RCR tweet says they were disappointed with this, and the tweet of the week from Denny Hamlin was not as disappointed as I was off turn 4, which is absolutely spot on. I don't really know where we go from. We're going to talk about Logano. I've got more thoughts on the Logano thing. We're going to get to that shortly because that's another thing that needs to be discussed. But Jeff Burton said it on the NBC call. He's going to have to hit him to get through going into turn 1 on that last lap of the overtime. And that's exactly what happened. And if we're going to have this on, it doesn't matter where we are, I guess, Watkins, Glen, Martinsville, Richmond, Daytona. If you're in first and you've not got 5 seconds of fresh air behind you, you're going to get moved out of the way. That's not racing. That's crashing. It's demolition derby. It's rubbish. Rubbish.
This is the top level of stock car racing in the world. And we have just sent a message to every kid watching this, to every young late model driver watching this, to every truck series driver and Xfinity series driver watching this, that you can right rear hook somebody on a short track intentionally and get to keep the win. What? And I said this on Encore Monday Night. Can you name me a series where they would look at that finish and not immediately say, clear and obvious, there is no way you get to keep this victory? Does one exist? I can't think of one.
I can't think. We've had in other series, definitely that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, Verstappen in Austria with Lando Norris, taking him out, deliberately moving across the track to block him, to stop him getting the win and taking them both out of it. Adam says as well, wait till Bristol and Martinsville, payback is coming for Austin Dillon.
Well, is it though? Because if he doesn't make the playoffs, it doesn't matter. So Joey can keep his anger in his pocket because it doesn't need to come out now if he doesn't make it in the next 3 weeks.
Lindsay says the thing you guys are missing was that there was no malicious intent. 3 is the only wrecking the 11 because of the playoff rules. I think we might still have the 22 thing, but not the 11 thing without the. I think it cuts out the playoffs. Oh, PL. I thought it was PI for a second. Without the playoffs, yeah.
With all due respect, Lindsay, I said this Monday night as well. I think in this situation it can be both. It can be like, of course, if you have a regular season, full season championship format, or you don't have a win and you're in format, then there was a lot less incentive. I guess there's still a race win on the line, but there was a lot less incentive for Austin Dillon to do this. You're absolutely right. But it doesn't change the fact that he still had the malicious intent to go down there and right rear hook somebody, which is clearly a dangerous move. I'm sorry. If you're going to try to argue there's no malicious intent, I could not disagree with that more.
It's the fact he did twice. That's what got me. It was the big one. And
Dale Earnhardt Jr., to his credit, on his podcast this week, because that was the other thing we talked about.
I should know.
Oh, Dale would have done this. Dale Sr. would have done the same thing. Dale Sr. wouldn't have been 32nd in points, by the way. I'll throw that out there as well. Dale Sr. wouldn't have gone 50 races without a single top 5 finish to his name. But sure, make the Austin Dillon's the new Intimidator 2.0 comparisons. I don't care.
Definitely.
Dale Jr. even said, listen, I can't recall a single time that Dad did that to 2 different drivers on the last lap. He had his fair share of run-ins. He wrecked Terry Labonte at Bristol. It wasn't a right rear hook at Bristol. It wasn't a right rear hook to another driver after he did what he did to Terry Labonte. I guess you could say the Logano incident was kind of like that. But even then, I think Earnhardt was closer to the corner and closer to Labonte than Dillon was. I mean, if you want to try to pass this off as a racing incident, Matt, you said it perfectly. There was no way he was going to make the corner. He drove in there deeper than he would have on any other lap because he had the intent of, if not spinning him out entirely, at the bare minimum, shoving him up the track so that he could move him out of the way and go win the race for himself.
Yeah. Something that's just sprung to mind. What was, two things actually that's just sprung to mind. Firstly, it looked like, to me, if you take a step back a little bit, it looked like one of those challenges on a NASCAR video game. The difficulty is at 200%. You've got to win this challenge to complete the game, but you need to make sure you win. And he did that by going, no one's coming past me. I'm going to win this race, which just looks stupid. That's as a thing. And also, and this was my thought on it the first time I saw it was, because as I say, it was Monday morning by the time I caught up with it, was take a step back and look at that and you go, Not, oh my God, look at that. Look what he did to make sure he got in. You just go back. What? It just looks terrible. And another thing quickly, this is something I noticed when I watched the last 5 laps this evening before we came on. There was so many fans on the fence for that overtime. I've not seen fans on the fence like that for an overtime anywhere. Like, they were 3 or 4 deep in places. That's bloody dangerous. Very, very dangerous when you've got bits of car that, thankfully, most of it stayed within the confines of the cars, sort of suspension damage and stuff. But that could have been bumpers in through or up against the fence and all sorts. When there's paying spectators there, we know it says on the back of the ticket, motorsport's dangerous, etc. But I don't know, it's only Richmond and it's not Talladega where we've had people up in the catch fence and such like. But still,
it could have
been very dangerous.
Yeah, and Josh, one more thing here, and then we'll get to Lindsay's comment, and then we can move on to the spotter, because I know that was a penalty that everybody was discussing as well. But Matt, you reminded me with the video game comparison. Cole Pern tweeted that the last video game move everybody seemed to love, right? Well, they continue to promote that one. That one was outlawed, and I just want to say one more time, I was on the record saying, I apologize, my work scanner's randomly going off for some reason here. maybe that's a sign that we need to move on. But I was on the record saying that move was not acceptable in the long term either. So we'll leave it there. But Lindsay says, I agree, the rules are too gray and loose, but the 3 didn't want to hurt the 11, and not for no reason. The 9 and 23 deals were trying to do damage, no other reason but to cause damage. I don't know. You right rear hook somebody coming off the corner, it should be obvious, in my opinion, that they're going into the wall and you're going to cause damage from that. I'm sorry. I don't see it.
Even Hamlin said in the interview with NBC, he understood why he did it. It's just he didn't want to be a part of it. But Logano, was, threw everything off and went to look immediately to NASCAR control area to have a word as well when he got out of the car. And he and his team sort of created like a line of ants walking along with each other as well. It was very intimidating looking on the battle cam that we had up in the commentary box as well. So we mentioned the spotter. You've mentioned several times that he was being told over the radio, you've got to win this race, you've got to go for it. Well, Dillon's spotter, Brandon Bennett, as well, was suspended for the next 3 races because he was telling him over the radio, wreck him in turn 4, coming to the checkered flag. Now, at first, team owner Richard Childress denied that the spotter used that type of language, but he went over to reporter Matt Weaver in the media centre after the race to listen to the audio. Childress responded to the audio saying, I didn't hear him and I was on the radio with him. We'll see if he did. He did a good job at it. He won the race. That's, of course, what a team owner is going to say in any situation. You always back the driver. Unless you're Christian Horner and Sergio Perez. But anyway, that's a different matter. Elton Sawyer and Binish's comments aren't something we need to be hearing from the spotters. That's the thing as well. Spotters shouldn't have got more than 3 races. Should have got more. Sorry, than 3 races. But is it deserved? Is the penalty deserved? I think so, because you can't really say to wreck anybody. But Matt, some of the others one. Is that a fair enough penalty to say, okay, it's 3 races, or as Ben sort of alluded to, should it be more?
Hello, Seth, by the way. We're all for cheerleading and cheering our drivers as fans, or as part, obviously in this instance, as part of the team. But there's a line. There's a line here, and that is way, way past it, especially in the whole context of this. And again, we come back to the playoff format, etc., etc. But yeah, I feel like, I don't know, 3 races is, what is it? It gets him out of the regular season sphere, because we've only got Michigan, Daytona, and Darlington left. But again, if he comes and wins one of those races, he's still in and he gets his spotter back. He should be on the bench until November, if you ask me. Ben?
Well, here's what I can, and Kyle Petty said the same sort of thing when Bubba Wallace got suspended at Kansas. That was the same day where one of Kyle Busch's pit crew members didn't get a wheel fully attached, or there was some sort of pit crew violation. And that crew chief and pit crew member get a 4-week suspension for a minor pit road infraction. but you can right rear hook somebody going 170 miles an hour, turn dead left, right, hit him in the right rear, spin him out, and you only get one. So again, I have no problem with a 3-race suspension, Matt. As you even said, you can't be saying that as a spotter. You have to send a message that's unacceptable. I wouldn't have a problem at least putting him on probation through the end of the year, at the very least, for sure. But to suspend, telling a guy, wreck him, 3 races. Guy actually goes ahead and wrecks him through a right rear hook, 0 races. That is very hard for me to reconcile. It's
like who gets punished? The guy who says I'm going to kill you, or the guy who actually ends up killing someone? Who gets punished?
I don't agree that the spotter should get away with it with nothing. But if you're going to sit the spotter down for 3 weeks, Austin Dillon should be suspended for 3 weeks at minimum, probably more, because he's the one that's actually driving the car. He's the one that actually heard those instructions and went ahead and acted on it.
And the thing is, he didn't only do it once, he did it twice with the 2 leading cars at the front. There's 36 other drivers behind who could have wrecked right into them and could have got someone killed. And they were all bunched up on the restart because it was an overtime. So they weren't spread out. They were right up there in racing pack, 2-3 wide at the back. I'm surprised we didn't see a bigger accident. But seriously, it's the question is that, okay, you only took out 2 cars, but there's no malicious intent. But you could have caused serious injury to 36 other cars behind you. And that's what even Formula One agree. If you're a danger to one, you're a danger to all.
You just brought up the malicious intent statement there, Josh. Go back to the incident itself. He's gone in and he has spun Logano out, and or he was trying to do that or knocking him out of the way. That's malicious intent to me. That, I don't know what else you can say. Brings me back to the DTM in about 2010, 2011 at the Red Bull Ring, when Dr. Ulrich, the head of Audi, got on the radio and told someone to push someone else off that was in a Mercedes. That went down really well as well. Lindsay says, yeah, I understand that's correct. Some drivers understood why he did it, Harvick, Hamlin, etc. No playoffs, no right rear hook. Well, I suppose yes, in that instance, but sometimes you just have to finish second.
Matt's statement is, as he says as well, this is what kicked off the conversation about why is the spotter being suspended and not Austin Dillon as well. It does lead to the question that, is the penalty actually right? Because he's been punished and Austin hasn't. So Lindsay also goes on to say they should just use the rules we use in supercars and super GT, no touchy. NASCAR they get off on the fact that you can touch racing. It's bumper to bumper. It's not like in INDYCAR where you touch them and it creates big ones on ovals.
Or
in NASCAR, you can get it exactly. Yeah, in NASCAR, you can get away with a little bit of a bump.
Yeah.
So they sort of push it, but where's that line?
Well, if you need a Richmond comparison, what Carl Edwards did to Kyle Busch in the spring 2016 race, that's fair game. That's using the bumper to get somebody loose to shove him up the track. And Kyle Busch even said after the race, and Kyle Busch, that he has a tendency to sometimes lash out. He didn't care. He thought it was fair game, and he was on the receiving end, and he still came across the line in second. I don't know how Denny Hamlin was credited with second Sunday night. That's the other thing. Tyler Reddick should have been second, in my opinion.
Point of caution.
But he didn't maintain his speed, though. He crossed the line. He got passed by like 4. It was like Greg Biffle at Kansas all those years ago. NASCAR is a contact sport. We can't take contact.
I agree.
Well,
I agree too.
This goes beyond contact to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a difference example between contact and just drilling the leader twice on the last lap. I don't know.
It's a difference between boxing and just beating someone up. It is what NASCAR is boxing. What Austin Dillon's done is beat someone up. That's the difference.
Like basketball is a contact sport, but that doesn't mean a flagrant 2 is going to be acceptable. That's how do you define contact? Like almost all sports are contact sports to a degree. Something is contact in some other thing, but at what point do you draw the line there? I think that I don't know where the line is, but if the line was not crossed Sunday night, I don't know if the line exists, to be honest.
Before we move on, if you take the contact out of NASCAR, don't go to Daytona and Talladega, because I'm sorry, those races wouldn't exist.
Adam says about Dale Senior, Jeff
Agreed.
Gordon wouldn't never have done what Austin Dillon did at Richmond as well. And Lindsay says NASCAR used to be a series which awarded consistency. Second these days means nothing. Running second for this guy on that night in that situation means nothing. And that's the key thing.
To
it
Ben's
does get
point from
playoff
before,
points.
finishing second would have been okay if he'd used one of the however many races we've had this season to actually do something instead of running in the 20s and get himself a victory on merit. And again, I'll go back to my point. He was going to win on merit before Ricky Stenhouse decided to be Ricky Stenhouse and cause a caution.
Well, and that's the biggest tragedy of it all, is that I felt kind of bad for Austin Dillon before he did this, because you're right. He was going to win this. He should have won this race.
The option tie was a brilliant call.
Yeah. Should have won the race on merit. It was like Haley Deegan, her last win at Colorado in the West Series. She was going to win that race on raw speed. And then she had the controversy at the end because she spun her teammate Derek Kraus out to win that one, and everybody was upset about that. And I don't condone that one either. But again, this to me even goes beyond. I mean, this even the Logano deal. Like, I mean, okay, we've seen contacts going into 3 or coming out of 4 where the leader gets turned before, and I mean, Dillon did it to win the biggest race of the year, for crying out loud. I don't think it would have been a popular move. I don't think it would have been this controversial either. It was the right rear hook to the 11, and that's again why I sit here and think to myself, well, what is the precedent now? What should we expect going forward? Because I thought when Bubba Wallace did this, that we said, okay, here we're drawing the line in the sand here. You cannot right rear hook somebody. If you do that, it's going to be a 1-race suspension. And then we confirmed that when Chase Elliott did it last year to Denny Hamlin, ironically enough again. And he also got a 1-race suspension. And then Austin Dillon does it here in 2024, and he gets to keep the win, and he's going to Michigan next week. I'm sorry. I don't understand. I really don't.
It's a question of, I don't know. I don't understand either. I honestly think this might get changed a little bit worse, because the process works both ways.
Well,
teams can protest it's not hard enough. Protest not hard enough on them.
Let me just say this one more thing, Josh, and then I know we got to move on to Logano here, because that needs to be discussed as well. There were 2 solutions. NASCAR had one job, in my opinion, and they could have done it in one of 2 ways. They could either disqualify him, take the win away, and award it, I guess, to Hamlin. Again, I still think Tyler Reddick should have finished second.
Top of third, yeah.
Whoever. It's not Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon's not the winner, and therefore he has no playoff points from this or whatever, and we resolve it there. Or, fine, you objectively cross the start-finish line first. You can keep your victory, but it doesn't mean anything because you're sitting out next week, and we're not going to give you a waiver because
this is a penalty.
I'm sorry, you can't give a waiver for endangering your fellow competitors. That Chase Elliott shouldn't have gotten a waiver last year.
No,
so I guess you could maybe say, well, there's a precedent there. If they had suspended him, they would have just given him a waiver and he kept his playoff eligibility. You know, I'm sorry, I don't think 2 wrongs make a right. If you endanger your fellow competitors, you should not get a waiver. So that's what they should have done. They either should have thrown his result out, disqualified him, or they can let the win stand, but he's not racing next week and he gets no waiver for his playoff eligibility. And they did not do either of those things, and therefore, in my opinion, they failed. They failed in their objective. They did not handle this well enough, and I know some fans are happy that he's, probably not going to make the playoffs now. Again, he's still got 3 more chances. We'll see. It's better than absolutely nothing, I suppose, but it does not go nearly far enough to satisfy what I would have wanted to see in terms of a punishment that fits the crime.
Matt, any closing thoughts?
No, I'll read Matthew's comment there on screen. Again, I'm not a fan of taking wins away. If we do that, who do we give it to? Which is, that's a conversation for another day. The guy that finished second, even if they had nothing to do with the finish, that's a brand new can of worms. Absolutely right. Hamlin gets his second place.
But what do you mean Tyler Reddick had nothing to do with the finish?
Yeah, exactly.
He was in the race. He crossed the start-finish line. I think he had something to do with the finish of the race that he was in.
Yeah. You know where he's getting to, though.
Credited with the. But that's, I don't even, this, you want to talk about a can of worms being opened. I don't know why Denny Hamlin finished second. Somebody had,
Point of
I've yet to
caution, they
see an
said.
explanation for that. Why did he
Point
did
of
not
caution.
maintain his? The caution came out. The field was frozen. You have to maintain your speed. He didn't do that. It's not his fault that
Crossed
he
the line
didn't do
instead.
that. But that's racing. Why did he finish second? I don't understand.
That's the thing as well. They said it was what they said on the broadcast was it was because it was from the point of contact and the caution that was put out from the computer.
Field is frozen, etc. Bill Weber.
Yeah, field's frozen because it's an overtime. So because it's not like it's a red flag. We go back, and then it's stopped there. So because it's not different to what it normally be. So they gave it. That's the reason, because the field was frozen at the point the yellow came out. We saw this back a couple of races ago in the early start of the season. It could have been Daytona when I think we finished into caution there because we had contact on the last lap and it froze the field. But yeah, that's the point. But in the last 200 meters of the race, it doesn't matter because, in my opinion, I agree with you, Ben. It should have been Reddick second and Bubba Wallace third, because I thought Bubba did a great race and so did Tyler.
But if we can bring Matthew's newest comment up here, if the illegal act was crashing Logano, then we retroactively give Logano the win. I'm sorry, I could not disagree with that more, because Lewis Hamilton spun Max Verstappen on the opening lap of the British Grand Prix in 2021. We deemed that illegally. I mean, and he got a penalty for it. Now he overcame that penalty because he's Lewis Hamilton, and also the penalty wasn't harsh enough, in my opinion. But we're not. Don't worry, we're not opening that can of worms right now. I'm just using it as an example.
Vodka, please, in my orange.
Do we give? But does? How can you give Max Verstappen was the innocent victim in that ordeal? But how do you give him the win? He didn't complete a single lap.
Yeah, I agree.
The win there. So I don't.
You can't give it.
I'm sorry, it stinks. And Logano has every right to be furious, not as furious as what he actually did on pit road. And hopefully we can get into that here in just a minute. But
yes.
I don't know. You could say Reddick wins. You could say Hamlin wins. I don't think Logano wins. I'm sorry. I don't see how you make that argument there.
I agree on Joey. Soz sucks for you, I'm afraid. That's how the cookie crumbles in that in that way.
Right, before we leave way, perfectly to get on to Joey Logano here, because we've got a segue now.
That.
Because the final penalty of this Richmond race did go to Joey Logano. And if you're wondering why, because he's been fined $50,000 for spinning his tyres in the direction of the number 3 team, showing his displeasure for the last lap dump and run. Now, the number 22 Ford's in-car camera showed him driving down pit road as a group of people had to jump out of his way. In that group of people were Austin Dillon's wife and kids. Some even wondered why they were standing on pit road while cars were coming in from the cool-down lap. But nobody's really surprised that Logano was disciplined. The photo taken by Alex Duss from NASCAR Digital Media. Well, Ben, back to you on this one. Do you agree with the penalty on Logano? And were you surprised that people were in the way on pit road post-race? Adding to this, we've seen this in other series. Remember last year in Baku, in the FIA, in Formula One, people covering the pit lane when Esteban Ocon came down during the race.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like what David Land said the last couple of days as well. Why were they even there in the first place on a hot pit road? Why are literal babies on pit road? I mean, forget what Logano did for a second. That's just dangerous in and of itself, because accidents can happen. You might not see somebody. I mean, even if there's no malicious intent in that regard. But then for Joey Logano to go and actually do that, I think, I mean, you can't. I completely understand. Believe me, I completely understand why he was upset. I think he had every right to be furious with how that finish panned out. But you talk it over outside of your race car. You cannot use your race car to show your displeasure, whether it's revving your tires in the direction of the team, or messing with somebody on the cool down lap. I don't care. You guys are grown adults here. Get out of your cars. Talk face to face, man to man. I would rather punches be thrown than punches be thrown with the race cars, so to speak. And
I was looking forward to the punching. I thought we were going to get a fight. I thought, brilliant. I've promises coming to the commentary.
He was off celebrating in victory lane. If Dillon hadn't won the race, I guarantee you we would have seen a fight on pit road at the end. But yeah, but this is the other thing, man. Like, I've seen $50,000. Some people should have said it should have been $100,000. I mean, it could be $1 million. I mean, Joey Logano's a 2-time champion. He drives for a billionaire in Roger Penske, who has several Fortune 500 sponsors backing his. Like, there's no figure, realistically speaking, that they could find him where he's not at the end of the day going to be all right. And because of the playoff system that we have now, there's really no points penalty aside from taking away his playoff eligibility, I guess. There's really no points penalty that's going to make anything, that's going to be worth a damn in this situation, because everything's just going to get reset before it gets reset 3 more times within the reset, because that's the system we have now. So the only, in my opinion, when you talk about fines, points, penalties, and suspensions, the only penalty that really sends any sort of message these days, because of the system we have, is suspending somebody without a playoff waiver. So if you want to send that much of a message, I mean, I don't know. I haven't really given this much thought. If you think it's that unacceptable, if you think it's just as dangerous as what Austin Dillon did to Denny Hamlin, I think you can make a case for that, because Austin Dillon's family and his pit crew members, they don't have the benefit of being in a race car that takes the brunt of the incident. I mean, they're exposed. They're going to take the brunt of the incident. If you think it's just as dangerous, maybe Joey Logano should have to face a suspension. I don't know. That's something that I think we'd have to debate and consider, and what precedent would that say going forward. But finding him $50K, it's just like, okay, I guess his pocketbook hurts a little bit, but who cares? I don't really care at the end of the day. It could have been $100K. It could have been 10 times that. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, it doesn't matter monetarily what you fine him. And to your point, Ben, he was as angry, I think, as I've ever seen Joey when he got out and spoke to Dillon Welch after the race. He was frothing.
I like that picture that we have, by the way. Whoever took that.
Looks like.
Yeah. Fantastic. Picture worth 1,000 words. That's it right there.
Joey Logano is Batman.
This week's caption competition.
Yes, indeed. We won't do Hots and Knots tonight. We'll do a caption competition. No, I joke. The monetary fine is just, as you say, Ben, it's just to show that they've done something, I think. We need to show some form of, here you go, Joey, please don't do that again. But the point remains the same. You started off with the very top there, was the pit lane's still live. We see incidents in the pit lane we saw that in the race at the end of stage 1. Christopher Bell had an incident in the pit lane with somebody. There was no crew members involved, but there was a touch in the pit lane at the end of stage 1 in the pit stops.
Logano, wasn't it? Comically enough.
It might have been. You might be right, Josh. I haven't seen. I just remember hearing about it. Anyway, the pit lane is live. We see crew members injured. I was going to say fairly regularly, but semi-regularly for racing incidents where there's a crew member gets bowled over or whatever. To have, to use a phrase, civilians wandering down a pit lane when there is still race cars with their engines running, and B, still on the racetrack, some of them, how can that be right? There needs to be a point where no one is allowed in the pit, and we have this scenario where they all come down the pit lane and then all the media come out and talk to the drivers, and there's NASCAR officials down there, etc., etc. There shouldn't be children in the pit lane while there's cars moving. Full stop. If the pit crew members have got to wear their safety equipment and helmets when they're in the pit lane, what's all this about? That needs to be looked into by NASCAR going forward, that there needs to be a point where you cannot enter the pit lane until point X, whatever, when all engines are switched off or whatever. Be you media, be you pit crew members, and obviously we see them jumping off the wall and celebrating a win anyway. I guess probably could let that go. But then after that, there needs to be a point where we say no one's allowed in the pit lane until a certain point, because, again, back to my point about all the fans being on the fence earlier on, bloody dangerous.
And JB, I see your comment here in the chat. I don't think we can display it because of the first word that you used there, but I don't know. Maybe if we took the winner's interview back to where it used to be and put it in victory lane, they wouldn't be on their way having to cross a pit road to get out to the front stretch.
The racetrack.
Interviewed. So, hey, score another point for the victory lane interview rather than the front stretch there. Maybe that's just further proof that we should consider going back to that there.
And again, if Logano and Hamlin had not been able to roll, you'd have recovery vehicles on the racetrack when there's people walking across the racetrack. It keeps, that's a big snowball, I feel like. It needs to be looked into.
Yeah, it in no way excuses what Logano did.
No.
But you can try to mitigate the danger by not having them there in the first place. That's the whole point that we're trying to make here.
A little bit of breaking news that has now been announced by NASCAR is that RCR Racing have announced that they are going to appeal the Austin Dillon penalty on the number 3 team as well. So that is now been made official from NASCAR. That's just come in. So they are appealing this decision.
Which you would say is the obvious route to go down. But I'm sat with both of my feet on the floor, and I don't think they've got legs to stand on.
Can the appeal process say that NASCAR didn't go far enough, and can they increase the penalty? Because in that case, appeal all you want. I'd be cool with that.
We've seen that before.
We're going to overturn this. Wishful thinking.
We've seen that before we see that in like soccer, where someone gets a red card, they get a 3-match ban, they appeal it, and then it goes to 5. Yeah. Can we see something along those lines with this, perhaps? While Fozzie's comments on the screen, he says, "Yeah, this was fine. You did something we don't like you doing, but I agree with me. You cannot have non-crew and non-essential people on pit lane with cars still moving," which I feel like NASCAR to look into. And Jackson, go back to your point about Esteban Ocon coming down. Well, he was coming into the pits to begin the last lap with a broken wing or something while they were trying to set up the. That's right. He hadn't made a pit stop to change tyres, and they were setting up the Parc Ferme barriers and whatnot at the end of the pit lane, and there was photographers and all sorts in there.
Ben, you might know it, but I believe it'll be Nicole and Joe who know it more. That at FIA events now, there's actually a red line in the pit lane where you can't go across in a session.
Only time I've worked credential media is for NASCAR and ARCA, so I can't speak to.
I don't think they have that rule. Whereas in Formula E and Formula 1 they do. To explain to you,
certainly
in
got
practice,
it sorted. I know that for sure. You can't go past the edge of the pit, the edge of the pit garage.
Yeah, that's that. You in practice, the red line is, if you watch Formula 1, the painted line where you see the advertising sponsors just before it goes to the fast lane. You get that little line going down with the Spanish Grand Prix or whatever. Yeah, that is always the red line. Effectively, so for media and that, you can't go past that line. But in the race, the red line moves back, as you say, Matt, to the pit garages, because in fact, this is in all circuits I've certainly been to. There's a red line at the front entry to the pit lane, and you're not allowed to cross it. You can't even set a foot across because there's sensors, and if you do it, your metal badge with the tag in it sets it off, and you get told off to race control and have to go see the clerk of the course. So maybe something like that would have to be introduced to stop it. Introduce a red zone where it pings
until a certain point.
Yeah. So certainly as well, because you flirt with that line. Let me tell you, standing in the pit box, you flirt with that line as much as you possibly can, because what you do is you put your badge over there and then you stick your head out like that. So you just flirt with the line as much as you can to get the coverage. But maybe that's something that needs to be done and moved into. For my IndyCar IMSA pit regs about our battle has gone as F1. Yeah, so in IndyCar it's about the same in IMSA as well. Yeah, I think they've introduced the same rule there. I thought Jackson might know, with him being in IndyCar. And I believe he's off to Portland as well, which is fantastic news in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, I forgot what we're talking about now. With this penalty with Logano, I think it's incredibly stupid, because it was very dangerous. I can understand him, we all can, being angry, but to your point, Ben, don't take it out in the car. Never do that, because that could have been really bad. Yeah, I'm surprised. I reckon that deserves a penalty on the grid positioning for the next race, if anything, as well. If that should be start at the back of the grid. Something like that. Yeah,
but NASCAR qualifying means nothing.
We've seen that, haven't we?
I would say it means
unless you get lucky like Joey did. Where was it? Atlanta, when he had the 1-lap penalty for the glove incident, and he was just serving it when the yellow came out, and it meant nothing to him.
It means less at certain tracks than it does at others. But I mean, you start 37th at Michigan. You got 400 miles to make it up with a fast car and a wide, fast track with multiple grooves. I don't think it's not ideal, but I don't think it's something you can't overcome. I don't know, but that sends too much of a message either here. So
I don't have one of my passes to show you the little badge with the pip in it at the back. Yeah, because I'm not in my usual setup. So that's in the com box, because the badges you might know, Ben, you might have one, but to scan into the paddock. The chip is like a little sticker you get on the back of like a DVD or something with it. It's chipped and it's covered. So that's
I don't know. Cool. We flash it and security sees it and they say you're good to go. There's nothing to. I don't know. Maybe
that's alien to me.
There is no scanners in a NASCAR paddock, Josh. That is certainly an F1 thing.
I feel that's the most European I've ever felt on this show. Right there is the fact is that we have to go through airport security to get into an F1 paddock, whereas in NASCAR you just rock up wearing a Stetson.
Like touring cars.
Yeah.
Just roll in.
Touring cars is so bizarre because I didn't even have my media pass visible, and I was in the media center for so long. And it was just underneath a bulleting of wet and cold clothes. Jackson says, in defense of the people out there, they were probably top access and also behind a NASCAR official. That's the truth. But I think
again, I'm not saying it's necessarily their fault. I'm just saying I think there should be more provisions in place to make sure that they don't end up out there in that place at that time in the future.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if that all happens? Austin wins the race. Meanwhile, on pit lane, his family's in whatever.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
The mushroom cloud will be absolutely enormous, much like the length of the show.
Yes, it is long, isn't it? I think we've come to the natural conclusion, though, of this crazy Richmond drama, in which case I'm going to allow Ben. No, because we'll be back on this in the pre-show. But something will happen on Friday, and war would have been declared, and Austin Dillon will be, I don't know, charging for with the skull on his car.
If I stick around for Hots and Nuts, you guys are going to be up until 3 a.m. your time. So I will happily, now. I appreciate the opportunity to join you guys on the show once again. Thank you, Kobe, who's backstage now as well. Always a pleasure to join you, and just had to come on and share my thoughts for this one because goodness knows I certainly had a lot of them. And I'm sure that this saga isn't over now because we have an appeal process that we have to sit through. And if they get this appeal overturned, I mean, I don't even, I mean, you want to talk about opening a can of worms. Oh,
We've got 3 weeks to get it done.
I can't. Yeah.
And
that's, I mean, we went through this with Clements after he won the Xfinity race a couple of years ago, right? And that was because that was the first time that they had penalized the winning car, but not disqualified them 2019 to present. They said like your win's not going to get you into the playoffs, but then they appealed it and then it got them in anyway. So I don't know. In this new era where it's a disqualification, that was another one that nothing about that one I understood. But if they win this appeal, then it really is just who Stock Car Racing Series is anyway here, and Drew Forrest is the one making all the calls. I don't know.
We will find out, and it will run and run. This is just the latest update. Thank you, Ben. By the way, great audio. By the way, I want your computer microphone. That was fantastic. To set up like that.
I'm gonna have to listen back to this. I have no idea how it's
really good
quality here, but maybe it's the office setting here. I've got full carpeting, brand new carpeting. Actually, we just did a lot of renovations in here, so glad you guys can hear me loud and clear.
Brand new repave in the Ben Schneider office. Good stuff.
There you go. That's just Bob Podcast tweeting. Thank you, Ben. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.
And moving on, thank you, Ben. Moving on to our, believe it or not, our second story of the evening. We'll speed through this quite quickly to get to Hots and Knots as well. And Kobe, who's sat bored for 52 minutes so far. In a silly season surprise, AJ Foyt Racing has signed David Malukas to a multi-year contract extension to drive one of their cars next year in the NTT INDYCAR series. Now, after spending the first 2 years of his INDYCAR career with Dillon Racing, it seemed like Malukas got his first big break to drive for a top team when he signed with Aaron McLaren for 2024. However, when he was sidelined for months due to a wrist injury from mountain biking, McLaren released him from his contract. Then he found a seat for the remainder of the 2024 season in the number 66 Honda for Meyer-Shank Racing. Malukas said he's extremely excited to join the team because they performed well this year, and the possibility of driving for the legendary AJ Foyt played a role in his decision. Graphic courtesy there of AJ Foyt Racing. Kobe's back with us, and we'll get a conversation with him now as well with the first question. Was Malukas to Foyt even a possibility in your mind before yesterday's announcement of it?
No, not at all, Josh. This was a major surprise to hear that David Malukas was going to AJ Foyt Racing. Naturally, given the chemistry he's built in a short amount of time with Meyer-Shank Racing, I just assumed that it'd be easy to re-sign David Malukas to a multi-year contract extension. I think Malukas and that number 66 team have been doing a fantastic job together in the 5 races that they've had together. And naturally, I thought it would be easy for them to continue that relationship. But apparently, I guess Malukas thought grass was greener on the other side, especially since AJ Foyt Racing with the alliance with Team Penske right now, that maybe if they continue to work on the progress they've had this year, especially with Santino Ferrucci, then maybe they can continue to march up the grid in 2025, and maybe Malukas feels like the long-term potential of AJ Foyt Racing is better than where he's at Meyer-Shank Racing right now. And after I had some time to think about Malukas' decision to go to AJ Foyt Racing, made me think about Marshall Pruitt's IndyCar silly season notebook, when he basically said, well, there could be a new alliance coming for Meyer-Shank Racing next year, so stay tuned for that. That announcement could be, just a few days to a few weeks away. But potentially you could see drivers from Chip Ganassi Racing go over to Meyer-Shank Racing. So I'm thinking, if that's the case, given a potential new alliance that's down the road, then maybe there wasn't a spot for David Malukas at Meyer-Shank Racing, that he had to go looking elsewhere. So I guess we'll know more, once that news officially gets announced. But given what we've seen from Santino Ferrucci this year in that car, Ferrucci is currently top 10 in the points, which is very impressive. And if David Malukas can match or exceed what Santino has done in that car, I think David Malukas might have walked himself into a really good situation. And if you look at Team Penske right now, Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, they're set to be here, Team Penske, for years to come. Will Power is getting up there in age. Yeah, Will still performing at the top of his game, so you don't really know when he's going to retire. Will Power looks like someone who could drive at a top level for another 5 years, but who really knows? And Will Power get up there in age? And if Power decides to retire in a couple of years or so, and Malukas is running at this Penske affiliated team, and if Malukas sets the world on fire, could Malukas potentially position himself for a future drive at Team Penske? So I think that Malukas might have potentially played his cards in the right hand here, thinking long term.
That is a cracking point, Kobe. That I never crossed my mind whatsoever. So you could have a potential future Penske lineup of Joe New, Scotty Mack, and little Dave. Oh, hang on a minute. That was on YouTube, wasn't it? And it all went a bit pear-shaped. Was it a surprise in the 24/7 365 silly season of IndyCar? I'm not really sure it was a surprise. But as Kobe's kind of outlined there, seems to be a good fit. And let's hope that it is for David, because certainly when we've been doing the races on USRN, me and Matthew Owens certainly were raving about him at the 500 and the previous. He's really got a good body of work, especially on the ovals, to his name. So he just needs a bit more luck, which he hasn't really had much of since the turn of the year, when he was supposed to be going to McLaren, Josh, as you outlined. So let's hope that for David's sake, he can get back, get some momentum going with this next year and be up there fighting for the front, and as Kobe mentioned, position himself for a couple of those real big drives that will be coming up in the next couple of years, with the likes of Dixon and Power perhaps stepping aside.
I believe
and
just
Matt, Matt, where are we going this weekend? We're going to Gateway. In the last 2 Gateway races, who's been up there battling for the win and looking very strong? David Malukas. So I think that this could be a very good weekend for him, and it would not surprise me at all if David Malukas is in contention for the win. Look very impressive coming off this injured wrist, and we'll see what he's able to do moving forward. And also have a comment from Jackson saying you're curious why Meyer Shank didn't try keeping him, but you got to believe he's going for another McLaren driver on his way out. And yeah, there are rumors, that could be a potential landing spot for Alexander Rossi. Go ahead, Josh.
I mean, it's just getting ridiculous, isn't it, with all this? It's like, forget the merry-go-round. We've gone full magic circle. It's ridiculous. It's literally just, yeah. Who wants it?
Don't look into my eyes, IndyCar silly season. Look around the eyes.
And you wonder, right, you want to forget everything you said. You're not a McLaren driver anymore. You're not going to go over to Motor Race. And then next you're going to be... Oh, it's ridiculous. It's really...
When you wake up, you will be a 5-time Indy 500 winner.
It's bizarre, isn't it? You can't work out what's going to happen next in IndyCar. We think Formula One's bad this season with silly season. It is worse in IndyCar. And it always seems to be, as it was a couple of years ago, Formula E triggers with Formula One, and then that Formula One leads into IndyCar. They all sort of link together as to what is happening. Lindsay says, the hit and miss in power is getting worse with age. What happened to McLaren and Palou thing? And is there a shortage of open-wheel drivers now? The thing about the power, it's simple. Let Jackson Lambrose be the lead commentator on JB Motorsports for a weekend. Will Power wins a race? It's simple. Twice he's done it. Twice he's won. And I've missed both. And with McLaren and Palou, that is still ongoing, isn't it? That court case?
Yeah, Josh. That's still ongoing in the courts. I read about it a couple of weeks ago, where Zach Brown basically went on the defense and said, "Hey, don't look at us with our driver situation." They say it's all Alex Palou's fault. It's Palou. Blame Palou. Don't blame us. So Zach Brown was deflecting blame onto Alex Palou there, but in all seriousness, the McLaren Palou thing is still playing out in the courts. And in regards to like shortage of drivers, right now we don't have enough seats for the amount of drivers out there. I guess that's a good problem to have, where we have a really good healthy grid right now, and we have so many drivers out there who are deserving of a seat, but unfortunately we don't have enough room at the table for all of them. So some really good talented drivers are going to be left on the sideline next year.
And what we haven't had in the IndyCar paddock for the last couple of years is a healthy second tier, with Indy Next going really good guns with grid numbers and such like. There's some future stars in there that will blossom, hopefully. The IndyCar gods are cruel to me, Josh, says Jackson.
He is, literally. He's led it twice at Road America, and I believe where did Powell last win? It was I was Donington. That
Road America he won.
Road America he won, and then he won Iowa 2.
Yeah,
that was it. Yeah, the 2 I wasn't there for. So what does that tell you about me? Maybe I'm the curse of him. I was commentating his last win, and I've missed his last 2. But despite recovering from surgery on his injured wrist, going back to David Malukas, he hasn't missed a beat, qualifying in the Fast 12 in 4 of his first 5 races so far this year. This has left some wondering if he's staying with Meyer Shank would have been the best option instead of signing with his 4th team in 4 years entering 2025. Now, Foyt didn't specify which car Malukas will be driving, as the futures of Santino Ferrucci and Stingray Robb will be announced at a later date. Team President Larry Foyt said Malukas is a fierce competitor who possesses a great deal of natural talent and believes he'll be a great fit with the team as Foyt continues to move closer to the front of the IndyCar grid. So, Matt, given Foyt's alliance with Team Penske paying dividends for the, of course, number 14 team this year, do you think Malukas could find a similar level of success as Ferrucci has?
I think it probably more over the season. If you take the season as a whole, you would probably say, all things being equal, that Malukas should finish ahead of Ferrucci in the point standings. We know how good Santino goes at the 500, but more often than not, outside of that, he's creating excitement, but not perhaps scoring so many good finishes and points. You think back to Detroit this year, where he just was crashing into almost everybody, it seemed like, at some point in that race. Just imagine if he got together with Austin Canapino. But I think Malukas if Ferrucci is the man that's going to be going from Foyt, and that looks probably the most likely at the moment, we think, from what we've heard, especially from what Marshall Pruitt's been writing on Racer.com, that Stingray Robb is bringing a lot of money to that team, and you would think if they want to keep going, then they'd need Stingray in the second car. So Santino might be on the chopping block, but I feel like Malukas would. If I had to take one of the two, anything being equal, I'd take Malukas.
Yeah, I think that this, like I say, this could be an incredible opportunity for David Malukas, and I think he has potential to really benefit from this Foyt Penske alliance. And it would not surprise me, like you say, Matt, if Malukas is able to exceed what we've seen from Santino Ferrucci. And as Lindsay says here in the chat, is Stingray or Santino out? We don't really know yet. Well, we know for one thing's true, at least one of them is out. Whether it's Stingray or Santino, or we've seen crazier things happen. Maybe someone swoops in and then both of them are out and looking for new rides next year. I think the smart play for the team would be, performance-wise, would be keep Santino in the 14 and then put David Malukas in the 41, so you can have a very strong two-car driver lineup here. But we know both Stingray Robb, it hasn't really been the best year for him. He's having a hard time matching Santino in performance. So I think strictly from a performance standpoint, we probably want to replace Stingray and all of that. But I think I've seen some others bring up the fact if you get rid of Stingray, since it brings a lot of financial back into for it, like who's going to pay for this program in 2025? So what's that going to mean for Santino? Are they going to keep Stingray, and just bring in David to replace Santino? Who really knows at this point? But as I've been saying, I think that this is a great opportunity for David Malukas. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to do with AJ Foyt Racing. And for his sake, I hope that this can be the Foyt Penske pipeline. I hope this becomes a home for him, because it's not really a good thing when you have a driver, switching teams every other year. Need for him to stay at one place, for a few years or so, try to build some consistency and all of that, so you're not swapping teams this year and that year.
David Malukas, the Nico Hulkenberg of INDYCAR. So let's check over with the end of our stories as we'll go into the next phase of our program, and we hand over to Matt White for the latest from the Grid EPI update.
Thank you, Josh. The Grid EPI, the Grid Endurance Performance Index, was on the beach this weekend. We had no races, the only break pretty much throughout the whole of the spring and summer stretch for the Grid Endurance Performance Index. So we skip forward to week 20, and the points are as they were from last week, with Andre Lotterer still top of the tree, but he has a slim lead over his Porsche Penske teammate from the IMSA paddock, Dane Cameron. 0.2 of a point between those two. He's a Porsche Fest in the top 10, only 7, 8, and 9. Constant Apollonian, who drives a Ferrari, and the Toyota duo of Kamui Kobayashi and Nick De Vries, not Porsche affiliated through any races cars that they've stepped into so far this season in 2024. A couple of races to come up this weekend. The US version of the GT World Challenge is at Road America. Second mention of Road America on the show this evening. They are there for 2 races over the weekend, and the DTM comes back from its summer break, and they'll probably be racing in the fog and the rain in the summer, because yes, they're at the Nürburgring. There is the top 50 as it stands through 20 weeks. We've still got 60 races still to score in the Grid Endurance Performance Index of 2024, and we'll bring you the updates on those races over the next couple of weeks. And then once we get into September, it really kicks off again with some more WEC races, and of course IMSA getting towards crunch time in their championship, and the top 10 very much filled with WEC and IMSA drivers going forward. So Nürburgring and Road America on the menu for the Grid Endurance Performance Index this weekend. Updates on those and more over the next couple of weeks. Now it's time to Kobe, more of this week's headlines.
Thanks, Matt. Time for some more motorsports news from around the world. With Joey Cohen departing the team, Legacy Motor Club announced that Jacob Cantor will replace him as director of competition. Cantor spent 16 years at Joe Gibbs Racing as an engineer before getting promoted to research and development team manager. However, his most recent role before coming to Legacy MC was the engineering and manager of vehicle performance at GM Motorsports. The team also hired Bobby Kennedy to be their general manager in a newly created role. Cantor will oversee the competition department, which includes the crew chiefs and pit crews, while Kennedy will be in charge of day-to-day operations. And on top of that, Eric Jones will also be returning to the number 43 Toyota next year on a multi-year contract extension. Jones said he's looking forward to seeing what the team can build together and feels like he's coming into some of the best years of his racing career. Both graphics courtesy of Legacy Motor Club. Bristol Motor Speedway will host a Major League Baseball game in 2025. The Atlanta Braves will play the Cincinnati Reds in Thunder Valley in a game being dubbed as the MLB Speedway Classic. The game will take place on Saturday, August 2nd, 2025. The baseball diamond will be built across the track in infield, which will be primarily situated between turns 3 and 4 of the last great Coliseum. Track president Jerry Caldwell said they're thrilled to partner with the MLB as there's a deep baseball history in Tennessee and the heart of the Appalachian League, graphic courtesy of Bristol Motor Speedway. Daniel Suarez will return to trackhouse racing in 2025. Suarez won earlier this year at Atlanta in an exciting 3-wide photo finish, which earned him a playoff berth. The same sponsor who took to victory lane that day, Freeway Insurance, will return as the primary sponsor of the number 99 Chevrolet next year for 1/3 of the Cup races, including the Daytona 500 and All-Star race. Suarez said Trackhouse is home to him and has enjoyed every minute of being with the team. He's currently riding a hot streak right before the playoffs after getting married during the Olympic break, winning in the NASCAR Brazil Sprint Race Series at Interlagos and performing extremely well at Richmond after utilizing the option tires, graphic courtesy of Trackhouse. And following the departure of Norman Nato, the Andretti Formula E team has signed Nico Muller to replace him alongside Jake Dennis. Muller finished season 10 on a hot streak with 4 consecutive top 6 finishes to close out the season. In 46 career starts in Formula E, Muller has only one podium finish, which occurred in Valencia during season 7. He joins the Andretti team that experienced a mixed season, with Dennis only getting a single race victory in Saudi Arabia, pole in Berlin, 5 podiums, and finished 5th in the team's championship. Muller said he has the goals of aiming for podiums and finally getting his long-awaited first career win in Formula E, graphic courtesy of Andretti Global. With Agustin Canapino leaving Junco's Hollinger Racing, Connor Daly will replace him in the number 78 Chevrolet for the remainder of the 2024 NTT IndyCar Series season. The number 78 is currently outside of the top 22 in the leader circle, so they need it to boost their chances of getting this entry into position to secure the end-of-season bonus. With 4 of the last 5 races on ovals, bringing in a strong oval racer like Daly gives the team the best chance of getting into the leader circle. Team co-owner Brad Hollinger said that Daly's experience will help the team grow and develop his car. Daly himself said he's excited to reunite with co-owner Ricardo Juncos after previously driving for him on the road to Indy ladder, and looks forward to earning the necessary points the team desperately needs to end the season on a high note. Graphic courtesy of Juncos Hollinger Racing. And with that said, gonna throw it to Matt for everyone's favorite game. Pick a winner.
Thank you, Kobe. A couple of races to pick from in Pick a Winner. It's a much more point-scoring weekend this weekend because we only had NASCAR, of course, last week in Pick a Winner, and we've got 2 to pick from tonight. There is the leaderboard with Matt B now with a 5-point lead over Ben Schneider in second position. Josh T up to third, joint on 26 points there with Kobe. We're going to start with MotoGP because they are back this weekend at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. It's probably going to be a Ducati race because it generally always is, not just at the Red Bull Ring. I am going to go with the king of the sprint. Jorge Martin is my pick to win on Saturday. Kobe, who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Jorge Martin here. Yeah, we'll see if we'll make it unanimous or Josh, you have someone different.
No, definitely for King of the Sprint, Jorge Martin. Definitely going to have it. It's a Ducati track. It's the original Ducati track. He's definitely got hold of it. I think he's won like 13 sprint races across the 2 seasons. He's smashing the field.
Certainly is. And our second race to pick from tonight is from the Supercars Championship. They are back and they are in Tasmania at Symonds Plains this weekend on the island for its annual trip. Not normally at this time of the year. It's going to be very, very cold at Symonds Plains this weekend because, of course, they are deep in winter down there in Australia, especially in the southern states. I am going to go with the guy with the hot hand. Chaz Mostert continues his winning streak and wins on Saturday in race 1.
Yeah, Chaz Mostert, Foyt, they've been really tearing it lately in supercars. And it seems like AAA and Chevrolet have really been behind the 8 ball here. But speaking of that, I actually think we're going to see Chevy and AAA bounce back. So give me a Will Brown race win for race 1 at Symonds Plain in Tasmania. Before I throw it to you, Josh, catch up on a couple of comments here. Yeah, Jackson said you're so stoked for the MLB game. I'd assume you mean Bristol. And then Adam says, as an MLB fan and NASCAR fan, you can't wait for the game at Bristol Motor Speedway. You're going to try to go. Yeah, that definitely looks really nice looking at the rendering that they created. All right, Josh, who you have for Race 1 Supercars?
Well, just before that, if anybody can't go and still wants to watch it, use EarthCam because they've got a camera at Bristol Motor Speedway that's available even during the NASCAR races. We use it on the commentary when it's there, and you can look at the track. It's a webcam over the circuit in full 4K. So if you want to see the game, it'll be there as well on that website. I'm going to go with Triple Eight, but I'm going to go with Brock Feeney. He's won 5 races so far this season, most of anybody, and I think he's got a good shot to win this weekend.
Lovely stuff. You can get your pick a winner picks in on social media using the hashtag pick a winner. So what have we got? We've got 2 MotoGP points up for grabs with the Grand Prix and the Sprint, 2 Supercars points, INDYCAR, and of course NASCAR at Michigan. Of course, we've talked much NASCAR tonight. Many, many more points on the board. If you're not on the board and you fancy getting yourself there, get your predictions in, and you could be shooting your way up the points table over the next couple of weeks. Use the hashtag pick a winner on the social media to get your picks in for the weekend, those races we've just talked about and the others as well. Time for a much, well, I don't know, hots and knots from the week. Jackson says quickly, Josh, I'm calling that game on JB Motorsports and you can't stop me.
Do it. Do it. Have fun.
I was going to, and Matthew says, as a Reds fan, I'm afraid for the world to see how bad they are. Matthew, it's not the Reds against the Cardinals because that would be both of our teams and they're both as bad as each other at the moment. Lindsay says Triple Eight track at Simmons Plain should be a belter, tends to shift between the Fords and Chevys on a track grip. And as I said, not normally run at this time of year. So that is going to be just something very different for them. It's normally at the very beginning of the season, normally after the Grand Prix at Albert Park, or it's been sort of penultimate round of the season, not really been in the middle before. So going to be interesting to see what goes down there. Hots and knots. One of my hots was going to be the Bristol baseball game because it just looks super. We've had college football there before. There is, thank you, Kobe. There is the rendering of the diamond there. Oof. We have to have the Bristol Motor Speedway Ice Classic next, don't we? Have an NHL game at BMS. What else could we have there? Maybe we could, next time there's an Olympic Games somewhere in the States, we could have something, because that's my other hot. Because there wasn't much motorsport hot from the weekend. Just the Olympics were brilliant, weren't they? Just super, absolutely brilliant. The closing ceremony was great on Sunday. And because I didn't watch any motorsport at the weekend, I don't have any hots to give you the motorsport variety. Josh, how about you? Have you got any hots for us from the weekend?
I've got a couple of hots. First hot comes from the touring cars. Rob Huff brilliantly defending from Tom Ingram, showing that old dogs do have new tricks. That was a very impressive race. The Legends, the 1934 Ford Coupes, modified to act like go-karts, gave us some classic racing and a back-to-front win as well, which was unheard of. And the biggest hot for me, I've got to say, from a big standpoint of like throwing my hat into the ring because they're friends, but Maddie Patterson and her team Sekhmet Racing, I told you after Donington as well, they had a miserable weekend. Lizzie got injured, Mallory was taken out in both races, and Mallory was really at a mental low point after Donington. She went away. She thought about, that's it, I'm not doing racing anymore, I'm not doing World Championship. She really did hit rock bottom. She's fought her way back brilliantly. And she got taken out in race 1 when running in 10th, but she fought back and she was 9th in the Superbike race, the WCR race on Sunday, and 9th, points go down to 15th. So a huge chunk. And I was jumping around, screaming as well. It was fantastic. And to see her come home with a finally a decent result again, it was sheer brilliant. And nothing but love and support to Mal as well over there. And of course, Mallory, Northern American, and she's just been selected as well as one of 8 Northern American riders in the FIM Motorcycle Games at the end of the year in Jerez. So,
nice.
Yeah, going from better to better. And I do know that everybody got a little bit tipsy afterwards as well. So I think, I can't say that actually. I can't say that on air. One thing I do know. But everybody had a very good time afterwards.
Very, very good. Adam agrees. The Olympics were excellent. That's one of his hots from this week. Jackson says, speaking of, we need cycling on the Long Beach Street Circuit. Yes, absolutely. Have the time trial or something around, or partly around Long Beach. That would be cool. That would be very, very good. Matthew Owen says, oh, goodness, we needed Kane's Predators there for a Winter Classic. My goodness, live from Thunder Valley. Yes. It's the only thing left to do now, I guess, unless they do an NBA game outside on a very small court in the middle of what would be pit lane or something silly. But hockey probably is the next thing on the list down at BMS. They're doing some good stuff there. Knots, I think we've probably covered the biggest knot of the week for the first 50 minutes of the show. Outside of that, as I said, I didn't watch anything at the weekend because there wasn't too much on. Touring cars and Superbike, but not if you've seen the picture, Glenn Irwin from the first race on the Sunday at Thruxton flying through the air at the complex in BSB. Not hot, the photo opportunity, not the fact that he was flying through the air when he should have been attached to his Ducati. But not good for Glenn. Other than that, I'm struggling on knots, apart from the fact that we spoke about it for 50 minutes.
Yeah, well, mine obviously was Mal getting taken out for no thought of her own from a rider on the inside line at 3 and getting no penalty. And yeah, that was very frustrating. I've cracked my floorboard, jumping up and down so hard. I literally
race stewarding in a motorcycle race paddock. No,
I know, crazy, isn't it? Usually they're very good. They're almost NASCAR level at this point of stupid decisions. But I can't think of actually another big knot to come into it because not much has happened recently, I suppose. The bigger news is sort of going to start coming up now as we get out of the Olympics and Formula 1 comes back and INDYCAR wraps up and NASCAR goes. That's when it's going to come, isn't it, in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah.
So,
beginning of the climb towards the end of the season, which is always exciting.
For you, I hate it. I love being busy. I'm not looking forward to the off season. I go crazy.
As I said to you before we went on the air, I'm still watching races from June, so it might take me till December to watch this stuff.
You'll be watching the F1 Championship decider in Abu Dhabi just before Bahrain.
Ah, good. It's Saturday. It's on the Saturday of the Grand Prix weekend in Melbourne. Yeah, exactly right.
I keep forgetting we're in Australia next year for that one. So taking a look at our upcoming schedule from the remaining week. Saturday, Grid Live pre-race. That is going to be at noon Eastern. Sunday, Grid Live wrap-up is 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Michigan. And Monday, the Grid Encore recapping the ARCA and Xfinity races from Michigan, plus an additional ARCA race on the dirt at the Illinois State Fairgrounds, which is going to be a fantastic one to watch as well. Please do continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for helping us reach the 1,000 subscribers milestone. Now we're on the road to 2,000 subscribers, and you can hit the bell icon to get notifications for when we go on the air, and follow all of our social media platforms and visit Grid Ranking. Sorry, I keep doing that. Sorry, we'll change websites. Visit gridnetworktv.com. When you said it as much as I have, it gets confusing. Matthew says, I was trying as much as I could to get motorsports on the Olympic car for 28. Instead, they went with cricket. Yeah, Tom Dillon's happy. We're not. And believe me or not, say again?
Bring back A1 Grand Prix.
I thought you were going to mention that at some point. Yeah, that is the World Cup of motorsports.
Trust me, there's been a fair amount of Twitter activity around Olympics and A1 Grand Prix over the last couple of weeks. I've seen them all.
Yeah, no, everyone forgetting about that. That was actually what it was supposed to be for. And I don't know. Well, to be fair, in F1, you get gold medals now for winning a race. You can also take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. You can join Colin, Mark, Shell, Robin, David, and Matthew, who invest each month in the Grid Network. And we encourage you to join these fine folks who keep us on the air as well. Because once we hit $500 per month, we can start sending out our team to the chat to cover more races and continue expanding our coverage. Into all of that is in the video description below. And if you wanted to make a one-time donation, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, get your name on the board, and invest as much as you want, and consider buying specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you for it live on the air as well. Now, for Kirby Lambeth, Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, and Ben Schneider from Grid Encore and lastcar.info, I'm Joshua Birch. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry it's been a long one, but it's a very, very busy night. Good night to you all.